Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another week and with another Friday night of racing action at the top split level in the one and only official iRacing GTE Sprint Series by CONSPIT, brought to you on that premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. It is week 10 of 12 in the 2025 season 1. We've had some phenomenal weeks of racing so far. We've been to venues in the United States and around the world, but today we're on European soil, in particular for the Italian circuit, where it's the Autodromo International Enzo e Dino Ferrari, more commonly referred to as Imola in reference to the local township. A circuit that throughout the years has seen one of the most massive evolutions of a circuit, with a circuit originating as a high-speed, no-holds-barred, all-in, adrenaline-pumping racing circuit, while over the course of its decades of existence is a circuit that's had to be evolved into what you see today. And as our drivers get ready to go racing on the Grand Prix circuit, it's no slouch compared to its predecessor layouts, in the fact that whilst this circuit is no longer a high-speed circuit by many regards, it is still a circuit where the corners come at incredibly high speeds in terms of getting ready to go into those braking zones. Gone along sweeping curves to the 80s and the 90s after multiple revisions due to safety concerns and a huge number of incidents in what has been the history of this circuit, although we won't dwell on those too much. And nowadays you have the multitude of chicanes, the extended straights, and also the tight and absolutely tricky hairpins, and put it all together and you've got a 3-mile course consisting of 17 corners, which is absolutely terrific to go racing at. And of course we're here today to see how our top split drivers get on in the 1900 GMT, that's Greenwich Mean Time, or UTC Universal Coordinate Time, top split. But as we get ready to go racing on this Friday the 21st of February, we welcome you all to this live broadcast brought to you on YouTube at TX151 or the channel also known as Paul Walsh. And the commentary booth, allow me to introduce myself, I'm your host and commentator, Paul TX151 Walsh, also known as Britain's Bit, depending on what media you follow me on. As our racing action gets set to get underway, with the qualifying session currently in progress in the background, we can see our schedule on screen there, times in GMT or UTC, and what will be at just under 3 minutes time, we'll be going to the grid for our 45-minute race. The clouds are over the circuit, the temperatures are low, and that means the heat's going to come from the tyres and the rubber that's laid down by drivers. But let's give you a recap of the season schedule so far and what we've still got lying in wait. Because whilst we only have 3 weeks remaining, including this week, well, last time out we were in the United States at the WeatherTech Raceway at Laguna Seca, and that was week number 9, and today we're here in Italy at the Imola Circuit. After today, we've got 2 more weeks to go before the conclusion of season 1 in 2025. Next week, we'll be at the Detroit Grand Prix Circuit at Belle Isle, and then we'll be wrapping things up with a return to Italy for the Autodromo Nacional Monza. Indeed, we're flitting back and forth between Italy and America, and we're absolutely loving to see it. But coming onto our circuit for today then, well, located near the city of Imola in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy, is a circuit that is synonymous with many a major motorsporting race driver and fan in terms of the names of the corners, and thank you to iRacing.com for the brilliant simulator and the fantastic track map we have on display. It's 17 corners here, playing a wide array of chicanes and medium to low speed corners, particularly some rather tricky hairpins such as Tulsa at turn number 7, and also the double left-hander Ravazza to complete lap. It's a circuit where drivers are not going to have very much breathing room to be able to keep themselves cool, because by the time they get themselves cooled down, it's time for another heavy braking zone. But with those braking zones come plenty of overtaking opportunities, and keep your eyes out in particular to run into the first chicane at Tamburello at turns 2, 3 and 4, also the route to Tulsa at turn 7, Piratella at turn number 8, the absolutely infamous Aqua Minerale chicane at turns 9, 10, and flitting out into the very anti-alta chicane, the lowest speed corners on the circuit at turns 11 and 12, and of course the braking zone downhill through 13 into Ravazza. But coming on to our rules for today, well, we can't go racing without rules, and this is an open setup series with fuel loads restricted to 50%. In terms of the race, the grid shall be set by a closed qualifying session, which is currently in progress, with the races that commencing via a rolling start, as it's a tradition of the CONSPIT GTE Sprint Series, and we will see that drivers shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 16 or more instant points. If that goes up to 25, they'll be disqualified from the weeks of race. But as we then come back to our circuit side, and let's take a look at our drivers who are out there at the moment, looking to deliver the goods in qualifying, or should I say parking it up and deciding they're coming towards the end. And indeed that's none other than what was there, Balta Fernandez, who we briefly saw. But right now, as we do see Gorkan Vici making his way on through, the Swiss driver here yet to get a valid lap on the board in the Corvette C8, as he makes his way in towards the right into left there of Alta. Well, the fastest time right now has been set by none other than Vicente Aparicio, the Spaniard there, absolutely flying, I do believe, and as he makes his way on around. In fact, I may not have his nationality correct there, so I do apologise if I've got that wrong, Vicente. When you do watch this back. But I can tell you one thing, Vicente absolutely flying over the course of the week so far, and he really has been setting the pace. And, well, we had a little bit of a joke back and forth between he and I before tonight in the fact that if he does take the victory, and given the fact he's been cooking so well at the Imola Circuit, I'm going to be upgrading his racing license to a fully blown chef's license. And, well, as we do see Avicii coming across the line, puts himself at P7 there on a 38.952, a good lap, and he's got one more available to him, and he will just about squeeze that lap in. He's left it very tight, but if he's able to improve, he should just be able to get the lap in there. Meanwhile, elsewhere, we do have Cedric Boissier, the Ford GT driver, making his way out of the auto chicane, as we do hear that lovely roar as he makes his way on through down towards Ravazza, and as he comes on down right now, I can tell you one thing. In the fact that as he comes into the braking zone, he's been one of those drivers who wasn't there last time out when we were at the Laguna Seca circuit, but he's definitely been a recurring driver in what have been these top split broadcasts, and with the 3,000 strength of field, or the 3K strength of field, to be a little bit more precise, 2,963. It did split just before we did go in towards the race sessions, and therefore that's why you're seeing 18 drivers here, and then the rest of the drivers going into what was the bottom split lobby, where it's absolutely great to see so many drivers getting on board, and Boyce here becoming a mainstay as he moves up to P5 on a 38.862. Incredibly tight to be inside that top 5. I mean, look at that. Boyce here in P5, only what is a 10th ahead of Vici in P8 as we've got 30 seconds left on the clock. We're looking at Carlo Panzoldi as he heads into what will be at the Villeneuve chicane as he comes on through there in the BMW M8. And the BMW, a little bit of a bogey pick this week compared to many of its rivals. It hasn't quite got the rotation of many of its peers, given the fact that the BMW is the only front-engine rear-wheel drive car available in the GTE class, available in iRacing, and therefore it is the car that's going to be quite stable, but has it got the rotation it needs? And the answer is no when you consider all of its rivals are mid-engine rear-wheel drive. But will Gorkanovici come across the line? He's going to have 5 seconds to do so. He does come across the line. Does he improve? Right at the end, he moves up to P4, leaves it to the last minute, and what a way to set a lap there. And Avicii moving it just onto that second row. But it's time to head to the grid, ladies and gentlemen, for our race for today. So as our drivers begin to make their way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for the Week 10 top split race. And as we can see, Vicente Aparicio lining up on pole position there, and well, I do believe the Spaniard, he does hail from Spain, lining up in the company of JB Maceda, the French driver there, almost 6 tenths off of the pole sitter, and what a delta between the two of them. And it does look as though right now the number 1 driver, he's number 1 for a reason. He's looking to continue that run of fortune over the course of this week. Then do have none other than Dev Gore starting in P3 there, just ahead of Gorkan Avicii in P4, and then it will be to the combination of Bulta Fernandez and Cedric Boissier who line up on the 3rd row of the grid. And so at that point you can see it with Bulta Fernandez starting at P5, directly behind him is the Argentine in P7 Gustavo Colici, and the gap there being 4 tenths between them, but Colici just missing out on what was the 3rd row of the grid by less than a tenth, to be a bit more precise, being only 75 thousandths. Vitor Alves, the Brazilian driver, a further what was hundredths off, or what was 12 thousandths off, started P8, and then wrapping up the top 10, Rodney Cropper from the United States and Matthias Matthew Siegel starting their P10, 1.6 seconds off of the pole time. We then have Bernd Girl starting P11 ahead of Jordan Shamblin, who you will have seen previously, indeed last time out at Laguna Seca. We had mixed fortunes at the American circuit, and he'll be hoping for a much more steady state today. And then on row number 7, we'll have Luis Alvarez ahead of James Goulet, and then we have on the penultimate row of the grid starting P15, Mike Rodman from France, head of Mathieu Duis, and the Canadian driver will then be followed up in the fluorescent Folks machine. Say that rapidly, I dare you, multiple times. And the number 17, we'll be seeing Carlo Panzoldi in the P17 car, starting in the number 16, and there'll be Wilfred van der Besten, who completes your 18 car lineup there with no qualifying time set. The Dutch driver starting 18th out of 18 starters, and well, it definitely is going to be a challenging race, no doubt about it, because the thing about the Imola circuit as well is the fact that it is a circuit there's plenty of overtaking opportunities available. There's just one slight challenge with those overtaking opportunities, and you've got to be able to get the best possible run out of the corners onto the long straights to make those overtakes happen. And we will have a partial formation lap as our drivers get themselves underway. They will be starting the formation lap just in the run into what is Aqua Minerale as he comes on through there. It does Aparicio, and well, as we do see Vicente gradually get himself up to speed now. Well, we do have JB Maceda alongside, and the theory would be here that for our Corvette C8R driver is if he can get the hammer down and get a good opening lap, he should in theory run away of proceedings based on what we've seen over the course of the week so far. But is that the way it's going to play out? Maceda surely in the Ferrari, and that's an interesting pick in the Ferrari. We don't see too many Ferrari 488s, but he looks as though he's quite comfortable in it. Well, if he can get himself ahead, right at the start. This could be a very different story of the race today, but we'll have to wait and see, as we do see what is a top 5 dominated by Corvettes, a couple of Ford GTs inside the top 10, and a couple of Porsches further down the order, and the highest placed Porsche being Vitor Alves starting in P8. But as they make the way down now behind the safety car, we jump on board for a brief moment with your P8 starter there, Vitor Alves, and what can he do from the 4th row of the grid? Well, this field's starting to get very close and very tasty together, and well, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, as we do look back to the exterior cameras, we look to your pole sitter and Aparicio getting ready to go racing. As we say hello as well to Cactus Lord in the YouTube chat, who sadly couldn't make today, and well, I'm not doing too bad, thank you Cactus Lord, but it's always a great Friday when we get to do some GT racing. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's to Vicente Aparicio to take his green flag racing. And just like that, he goes. He doesn't wait around, does he? And as he goes so early, it catches the field out, and we are green flag racing, ladies and gentlemen, for 45 minutes here at Imola, as they roar their way across the start-finish line straight and onwards towards turn number 1. And you can see immediately Mercedes under major pressure here from the Corvette army behind, as they come into the braking zone for Tamburello, holds off the charge of Gore, Avicii alongside. Meanwhile, further back, that is Vitor Alves versus Rodney Cropper. 2 wide, they come through Tamburello. It's going to be 2 wide all on the exit. Cropper's still down the inside in the Ford GT, the black and gold machine, as they come down towards the braking zone, and behind that is Matthew Siegel getting very close, can't quite find it, still 2 wide as they come with the exit, but at long last somebody has to give way, and it's the Ford GT of Cropper that loses out there, but he's not going to give up here. What is that? Matthew Siegel trying to go round the outside, in the end finds that the Tosa hairpin's not being too polite on cold tyres, and therefore he has to fall back slightly, but he's not going to give up here, as that Corvette is not looking happy behind in the form of what is a Gill. But meanwhile here Cropper still on the attack, and that Ford GT getting a brilliant run out Tosa, and gets back out of Siegel as they head down towards Aqua Minerale. Well, brilliant start and battle between these two, and around the outside goes Goyle, so he does find a move in the end coming out of Piratella, so the Corvette driver does get it, but goes a little bit deep. That'll be an off track. I don't think he's going to pick up a black flag for that one, but he's going to be careful. You can see Siegel now looking to make the move here versus Goyle in towards what is the Alta chicane. Can't quite find it further back, however. We do have our 2 BMWs running together there of Gourlay and Panzoldi. Panzoldi's already gained 1 place off the start as they head up towards Ravazza, but as they come down towards the corners, I should really say, well, meanwhile, we look towards the front of the field, and already your pole sitter has put a second amongst the pigeons as he roars his way onto another lap. So as he comes towards the end of lap number 1, it's Aparicio who leads ahead of JB Mercedes P2, and then it's Gore in P3 ahead of Avicii P4, Fernandez P5, Gustavo Colici P6 ahead of Cedric Boisia. Then you have Alves in P8 in the sole portion inside the top 10, followed by Rodney Cropper and Bernd Gill, and that completes your top 10 with Matthias Matthew Siegel P11 at best the rest. Further back, however, we've got the battle of the BMW still ongoing here. And that's Panzoldi and Gourlay really fighting hard against each other. Panzoldi losing out there, and I believe we had a little... Oh, goodness me, that's a big moment for Gourlay. Just takes a little bit too much rotation there, coming on through Tamburello and sends the car around. The Castrol livery BMW M8 ends up in the gravel, but not for too long. He gets it out of the gravel and gets himself back up to speed. And there we're going to see Wilfred Dembesta, who started from the pit lane, make an overtake. He'll just about get on the inside there in the colourful liveried car. And as they come in towards Villeneuve, well, Gourlay now all the way down to the back of the field, but 9, there's still plenty more to do, and there's plenty of time to do it. But as we do look back up further at the order, this is your P11 driver Siegel, who we look back from the rear of, as he makes his way out of Piratella and down towards the Aqua Minerale chicane. And right now, not too much he can do in terms of making progress versus his rivals in front, but that's a very close run there from Alvarez. Gets it all out of sorts. Alvarez not too happy about that, as Shamblin's going to look up the inside in towards the Alta chicane. Gets it there in the Porsche 911, and well, Siegel was just taking his line, but I think it may be the situation whereby Alvarez was really caught out by the speed difference between the two of them under braking, and was as we look to the exterior cameras, well, he's lost a place as a result of that, drops down to P13 as they make the way in towards Ravazza. So the one thing we have to consider, however, on the flip side of the coin, is I think Bernd Gill had a bit of a poor run on through the corners initially, and that may have just set up the run. In fact, Rodney Cropper, I should say, had a slow run through Aqua Minerale, and that's what led to a bit of a concertina effect. And unfortunately for Alvarez, he got caught out in the concertina, and that's why he's lost the place. But looking further back now, we've got a little bit more fighting here, and this is Panzoldi looking for a move. So whatever's happened since that off for Alvarez, he's really lost out, albeit on the brakes. Oh, goodness me, a big lock-up from Luis Alvarez, and this is going from good to bad to disastrous in very quick order, and I can imagine right now that number 18 driver is going to be absolutely fuming with how things have gone on the lap, but he's got to get his head down and think to himself, right, it's not going right, but what can I do to right the wrongs? And the answer is just crack on with the race and don't make any more mistakes. It sounds easy, but it's not when you're racing at these speeds and when you're racing in such a high caliber split. And as they head on around here onto lap number 3 of racing, well, meanwhile, whilst the top two are running away, we do have the battle of the Corvettes here, and well, you do have the car that's reminding me a little bit of the silk cut Jaguar Group C machines of what was the 1980s into the 1990s, albeit that's not the livery that's gone for here, but the colours are giving me those vibes until I look closer and realise that I'm completely colourblind at this point in terms of the fact the colours are a bit different there, not to upset anyone who is colourblind, by the way, I should point out, but in fact that's the Taco Bell colours there as he makes his way out of the auto chicane and down towards Ravazza, and as he does so, Dev Gore under pressure from Gorkin Avicii, and Avicii looking on the inside of the kink, but put himself on the outside now into the double left, and this is going to get very tight as we see, oh goodness me, a bit of a love tap there from Avicii to the back of Gore, and that is going to cause the whole field behind to back up as they make the way in towards another lap. Well, the top two are already 2 seconds clear of this battle. If you're looking to Mercedes, who's up the road in the Ferrari, and Mercedes is able to get the head down now and is setting personal best, but Aparicio at the front of the field right now is a whole second faster than the majority of the field, and well, it's definitely shown as the Corvette leader is pulling away off screen. But we continue to watch this battle here for P3, and it is a long line of cars further back for a brief moment. That is the battle for P10. That's a swap of laces between Siegel and Gale, and Gil then losing out versus the Ferrari of Siegel as it does make some progress. So the Ferraris here are actually doing very well in home territory, and as they come down towards the braking zone for Villeneuve, well, Siegel now up into top 10. Where can he go from here in the white and black Ferrari? Well, the answer is he'll be chasing after Rodney Cropper, but Cropper is 1.5 seconds up the road, and will Bernd Gil given the opportunity just to run away? And I think the opposite answer is going to be no, he won't, unless he sees an opportunity, especially with the fact that Jordan Chamberlain is catching up now, and the Porsche driver wants to also play a little bit in this battle. As the drivers continue to roar their way towards the second half of this lap, we jump on board here with what is your P7 Ford GT driver of Cedric Boissier as he comes out of Aqua Minerale, and as they head up towards what will be the auto chicane this time around, we're going on to the brakes. The Ford GT a little bit of an outlier here, and we have seen the Ford GT be very strong at some circuits. Many of you will remember a couple of weeks ago at Road Atlanta was an absolute monster. In fact, Ford taking a 1-2 there despite a lot of pressure late on in the day, but right now Cedric Boissier, the sole Ford representative in this battle for P3, albeit there are 2 Fords inside the top 10. Rodney Cropper is the other one in P9. We also do have the one outside the top 10. That's Dupuis in P14. Well, Boissier right now absolutely on a charge here to try and make up some more ground, but he's got to play this tactically, and I think he's just going to want to stay on the back of this pack right now and see if he can manage the fuel, manage the tyres, and give himself a little bit more longevity, not just on this stint, but also in the second stint of the race. Remember, given the fact that the pit stop time takes so long in terms of changing tyres, you don't normally see drivers change tyres in these GT Sprint races. They normally put the fuel in and they're good to go once again. But let's forget strategy for the moment, because the only strategy is the tactics we're seeing out on the circuit here, as Jordan Chamberlain watching the back of the Corvette in front of him of Gil, and also thinking about the Ferrari as Siegel's starting to break away, and well, in a bit of a topsy-turvy situation at the moment in terms of thinking, okay, how do I pass these cars, given the fact that Corvette has been looking very strong all week. Meanwhile, the Porsche, by comparison, not a car that seems to be too happy over the curbs here at Imola, from what I've been hearing down in the respective paddocks in the iRacing lobbies earlier this week. So the Porsche, a car with a lot of rotation, but it just doesn't like those curbs. But from them, oh goodness me, we come to a big instant suddenly, and well, I believe that's Gorkin Avicii being sent very sideways as he rejoins, and our cameraman catches up and finally finds what is the stricken Corvette C8R that's gone racing. But I think we've got some instants to unpick here, and well, we do have an opportunity to do so now that we are a few minutes into the racing and things are relatively calming down, although I say that, well, it doesn't seem as though things have calmed down too much there between our drivers. But firstly, we need to take a look back, an instant on the open lap, and this was an instant involving Mike Roadman in the Corvette C8R, and here is the replay from lap number 1. Now, this was down into what was Ravazza on the brakes there in the number 11, just loses the rear of the car slightly, comes to the screeching horn, and then gets the car back together, so collects it in the end, but definitely didn't want it to go that way. And then on lap number 2, we had the instant for James Gourlay, of course. Many of you remember this one, as he was battling his way into Tamburello, fighting hard, and in the end, the rear of the car just letting go there, and a near miss with what was Carlo Panzoldi. And then only moments ago, we did have that big moment for what was, I do believe, Gorkan Avicii, and we take a look back here, and this was the battle side by side between Borja Fernandez and Gorkan Avicii, and a tap there sends Avicii very sideways, and the number 4, Borja Fernandez, carrying on. I think both drivers are squabbling over the space into Piratella, but in the end there wasn't enough space given between the two of them, and Avicii will not be too happy with that. But I get the feeling it'll also be a similar story from Fernandez. He won't be too happy about the contacts, and they'll also both be mindful of have they picked up any damage on the cars. But there's a recap of the major instance over the opening, what have been 5.5 laps of the race near Imola. We still got a long distance to go, and for this man who we're looking at, Gorkan Avicii in P7 in the number 9 Corvette, well, he'll be feeling as though right now he'll want to chase down that podium a bit later. But as the drivers continue to head on through, we look to Vitor Alves just behind there in the Rexy Porsche 911, and a little bit of the story behind the Rexy livery, if you do wonder. It's the livery run by AO Racing. They do have, I believe, Rexy, and I can't remember the female counterpart that you will see in a purple-pink coloration, but it was all inspired by, I think, the son of one of the mechanics or other drivers who absolutely loves dinosaurs, and they decided to roll with the livery, and that's why it's such an iconic livery. And well, could this be? It's been definitely made into something well beyond a livery on the car. If any of you do remember the Daytona 24 Hours, you will remember AO Racing's post whereby Rexy was put to sleep the night before the race, and it was just a 15-minute clip of seeing what was a set of garage doors shut down and the sound of an animal snoring in the background. But right now we're not snoring on the racing here, because we still got another Porsche who's absolutely on the attack as we do look to ride on board here. The ride on board the dashboard of Jordan Chamberlain hasn't gained or lost any places so far today, but the thing is he's trying to gain here in the toe on the run down the start finish straight behind Gill and Siegel just a little bit up in front. But here's the problem he's encountering, and I get the feeling Chamberlain has set this Porsche up to be absolutely monstrous in the corners, feeling as though if he can't beat the curves, and you notice there how he's quite sensitive to touching those curves compared to the Corvette in front. The problem he's lost, however, by setting the car up for the corners is he doesn't have as much grunt on the straights. Of course, it doesn't change the engine power, but the amount of downforce that the car runs will affect that top end speed, and there's the difference with Siegel and Gill both running a little bit less rear wing perhaps just to give themselves some breathing room on the straights. And we do know in particular that Ferrari out the box can be very strong on the straights as long as it gets a good exit. Chamberlain there very sideways as he comes out of the corner of Tulsa and up the hill he goes, and well, as he makes his way in the draft once again. Well, right now a bit of a frustrating race. I think he's also got a balancing act to do here, which is does he push hard and in the end potentially strip the life out the tyres. And we do know the Porsche, much like the Ferrari, very sensitive to rear tyre temperatures, and when those tyres do fall out of the temperature zone, particularly on the Ferrari but also to a key extent the Porsche, it is a very hard car to get back into that optimum operating window. But he's going to have a peak there on the run in towards the auto chicane, can't quite find it as they disappear from our camera, and as he brings it back on through, well, he has to tuck in once again and stay in P12 for the time being, as we say hello there to Greg's and hi, and good evening to you, Greg, and I hope you're doing well. But the drivers make the way on through. Of course, we are missing Sin Cactus Lord and a couple other drivers out there, and well, of course, from week to week we will have different drivers in this top split broadcast, and it's great to see so many regular names as well as some new names out there giving it their all, as we are now quarter of the way through the race distance. And right now Chamberlain a little bit closer this time, intriguingly, coming out Ravazza. He does seem a little bit happier compared to Gil. The Corvette driver struggling on corner exits. I think he is pushing quite hard here in order to stay in this P11 slot and also stay behind that Ferrari and stay in the toe. And look how close they're now starting to get under braking into Tamburello, and I think that really tells you the story here. And also look at the compromise line that Gil is having to take there through Tamburello. He's not happy with the direction change balance of that Corvette. It really is not compliant, and that's why he's having to hold such a tight line into turn number 4, and he's going to lose a bit of momentum there coming out to Villeneuve by going wide. Around the outside goes Chamberlain. Does Gil look for a move? He tries to get back in, but in the end the place is lost, and Chamberlain's patience absolutely pays off there, and he gains P11. But now can he chase down Siegel rapidly, given the fact that gap had opened up to 1.2 seconds? But we'll have to wait and see. But as the drivers come on through, one is turn number 8 down towards 9. Well, meanwhile, let's look to our race leader right now. Is absolutely cooking up a storm at the front, and this is Vicente Aparicio, the Spaniard, absolutely flying as it would seem, given the fact his last lap a 38.18. And to put you in the perspective, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the lap time history between himself and JB Maceda, there is the delta, and lap on lap on average he has been 7/10 of a second a lap fast. He is absolutely roaring away with this right now, and well, the only thing that can stop Vicente is himself, it would seem, or a bit of bad strategy. But then again, it only takes one drive through to completely upset the balance, and just a little bit of speed in the pit lane will reward your drive through penalty straight away. Not that we're wishing it on him, but he's also got to keep that in mind. This race is not over yet, and it can very easily go the wrong way. But speaking of things going the right way here, as we do look back to Gustavo Calici, The Argentine as he comes on through the Tamburello chicane and chasing after Porter Fernandez. Well, after the instant that involved Fernandez and Avicii, it does mean that this battle for third place has now started to stretch a little bit, and I think all the drivers now more focused on just running their strategies and trying to run their optimum lines. And that's the thing with Imola, you do go through these periods where the racing gets a little bit quieter, although saying that, it's not getting quiet here at the back of the field. Oh, goodness me, now that I think is going to be a Wilfred Den Besten, who is not too happy about being squeezed there on coming through the Villeneuve chicane. Well, in fact, through the Tamburello chicane, coming into Villeneuve very shortly, I should say. I think Luis Alvarez, the driver who lost out massively earlier on in what was one of those big instants at the or potential big incident. It was a bit of a near miss at Quinerale. Well, right now, the number 18 driver just trying to get himself back in the racing spirit. But I think Wilfred Den Besten will feel as though he was squeezed slightly. Let's take a look back at what exactly happened there in that battle. And here is the replay. So they made the way onto the gantry board, that roar of the battle of the two V8s. And, well, Den Besten trying to go around the outside. You don't normally do that around the outside here at what is the Tamburello chicane. But in the end, just running out of room. Could he have been given a bit more room? Based on the camera angles we've seen, arguably yes. But again, we're not the stewards, we're the commentators, and the stewards, of course, are there if needed, and those stewards being the iRacing officials if anything gets reported after the racing. But Den Besten will feel as though there he might have just been slightly chopped off and had to back off. And, well, we return to live racing now, and Luis Alvarez will have his own take on the incident, of course. I think he'll feel as though that he claimed the right to the apex and was ahead in the run. But then, again, of course, in the heat of the moment, you do things as the driver that afterwards you may look back at and you can always learn from. And both drivers there will definitely look back at that one afterwards. But 15 minutes complete. We've still got another half an hour to go. We're not quite in the pit stop window yet. Remember, there is the one pit stop. They will need to take on fuel to get to the end of the race unscathed on fuel capacity. And, well, meanwhile, a driver who's not going to be unscathed on battling capacity anytime soon is going to be Mathieu Dupuis as he makes his way down towards turn number 2. And a look up the inside there from Mike Roadman. The driver had that big spin at Ravazza right at the start of the race. And Roadman on the offensive here as he makes his way out of the Tamburello chicane. And, well, currently where he started in this race has fallen back a little bit after looking for that move. But then again, just trying to build himself up here, and you can see the difference in body language between the two cars. The Ford GT of Dupuis much more versatile in those direction changes. Roadman being very conservative with how much room he's given himself up through the Villeneuve chicane. That will cost him some time, but also I think their track's just not quite happy with the way the car's rotating, and therefore deciding, okay, it's perhaps better just take it nice and easy. We do know the Corvette, out of all the cars available, the 5 different machines available in the GT class, it does seem to be the car that goes the best over the distance in terms of its tyre life. And, well, conversely, we have seen in more recent weeks that the Corvette hasn't always been the strongest over a single lap. Conversely, 2 seasons in 2024, where the Corvette really did seem to be the car to pick at every venue. But we have seen different cars running up towards the front. We do have a Corvette leading currently, of course, but we also have a Ferrari in P2, Mercedes, and we don't normally see Ferraris up there, so it's always good to see a little bit of variety, and definitely that variety shining through as Roadman there taking a bit of a wide run coming out of the auto chicane, and thereby falling back now as he gets the car back together and down into Ravazza once more. But just keeping his eyes on, and I think locking horns now for a battle for P14 with Dupuis over the race distance. As he comes out of the final corner, the final major corner, and on to the next lap. Well, both drivers there running together, trying to get in the tow is Roadman in order to gain a little bit of straight line speed as he makes his way on down. And we also say hello there to Lee Horner from Next Gen Racing. Hope you're doing well, Lee, and having a good day. And if not, well, hopefully a bit of racing will put a smile your way. But we're looking back here to Alvarez versus Besten, and look at the speed that Besten is getting here in that BMW. It's absolutely flying, but Alvarez is going to defend the inside, puts it in the middle of the road, and Wilfred Den Besten this time decides, okay, I'm not going to gamble by going around the outside. Instead, he's going to wait. But that BMW, I think he might have set that car up for straight line speed first and foremost, because that V8 with twin turbo and the speed that car's carrying, that was about a 5 to 6 mile an hour gain on the run down the start finish straight. And even with the tow, that is a lot of speed to be carrying as he looks all the way out the inside there. But in the end, the camera angle makes you think he's all the way along the inside, but he's not. He's just trying to probe, poke and annoy what is Alvarez. But Alvarez is not wilted under the pressure right now as we ride on board and look back from the rear of what is the number 18, holding on to 16th position at the moment. Wilfred Den Besten absolutely attacking as much as he possibly can. But the thing is, he's going to have to find somewhere else. He's going to need to be a little bit more inventive. Alternatively, he's got to try and goad Alvarez into a mistake. And the thing with Luis Alvarez, he's had a couple of incidents so far today, but he's not planning to make any more mistakes currently. He's absolutely digging in for this position as they leap their way over the auto chicane curves. And you can see Alvarez just able to carry more speed off of the chicane by comparison with Besten, and that might be an indicator there of exactly how the cars are set up versus each other. And we're going to stay on board here all the way down to what is the start-finish straight and the end of it, and you'll get to see a difference in the speed as they make their way through Ravazza 1 and Ravazza 2. The gap there at the apex, half a second to 6/10, and as they make the way on through, well, there goes Dembesta. He's into the pit lane already. Now, that is a very interesting choice of strategy. He's going to gamble here as Dembesta by pitting very early, and we are in the pit stop window technically now, Kim. We are in the 19th minute, but that is a very early stop, and it means he's going to have a longer second stint, but he feels as though it's the only way he can make progress. And well, speaking of BMW drivers in the pit lane, we have lost James Gourlay. We lost him at what was the best part of 4 laps ago, I do believe, and I do wonder if we can get a replay of what exactly happened to James Gourlay, the number 15 driver, who's had some misfortune already, but he's had some additional misfortune that's put him out of the racing. And in fact, we do have a replay, ladies and gentlemen, and here is what happened 4 laps ago. So this was the BMW driver making his way in towards the Tamburello chicane, where it all went wrong earlier on. It's gone wrong again, bounces over the sausage curbs, that goes a little bit deep, and immediately tows the car to the pit lane. I think some suspension damage, and not a happy driver of the car, and they've had to retire the car. That's very unfortunate for Gourlay, and well, it just was not to be his day today. But coming back to what is our live racing action, and back inside the top 10 now, we're looking at Gustavo Colici, who is 1.5 seconds off the back of Borja Fernandez, but perhaps more providently here, it's still being closed up to by Cedric Boissier. We haven't had anybody else come into the pit lane at the moment, apart from what is Wilfred Dembesta for that strategic stop, but every other driver seemingly going a little bit longer at this time, and I think trying to invest here in splitting the race equally as a minimum. We do normally see a lot of pit stops around the 22nd through to the 25th minute mark in order just to make the race what is 2 equal halves, but then again, those drivers up towards the front, they do normally stay out the longest of everybody, and they will try to stay out for the best part of a 30-minute opening stint in order to clear all the potential traffic they could stumble over the difference. But as they head onwards towards what is the Villeneuve chicane, no change at the moment, as we do say hello to Springflower there, and I do believe it might be cheering on Boissier, and well, very happy to have you with us, Springflower, and glad to hear you always enjoy the racing. We have got plenty of racing to come here at the Imola Circuit, because things have gone a little bit quiet, but I suspect when the strategy erupts onto the screen, that's where we could suddenly see things all come back together. Many of you remember Laguna Seca only a week ago, where things did go a little bit quiet, minus that battle for P3 that never seemed to end until it was the pit stops that ended it. But right now, Boissier chasing down Colici, and these two absolutely neck and neck in terms of lap times. Whatever one can do, the other can match, and vice versa. And as they come towards the end of the 21st minute, when will we see one of them gain the upper hand on the other? Because they head on through, we look back up to what is the P3 driver here of Dev Gore, who's not quite matching the pace of JB Masida, although saying that, the last lap set by our second place driver Masida in the Ferrari, a 39.04 versus Gore's 39.10, so it does seem as though that gap is coming together a little bit in terms of the gap between their lap times, and could that be the start of something? But we can see Fernandez there less than a second behind as they head across the timeline. Fernandez will gain the distance, so it won't be worth too much here as they come on through. Masida that time of 39.042. Gore 39.117, Fernandez of 38.505, so Borja Fernandez is now starting to build up some momentum. And despite that contact with Avicii much earlier on, with Gorka Avicii, that contact has not done anything to dampen his spirits or to damage the airflow over the car. So it was just a side rub. As I'm looking out of my contact booth window, and I'm seeing that Mike Rodeman's into the pit lane. So Rodeman decides to come in. He's going to be the second driver to take a pit stop, but a lot of drivers still staying out. In fact, the rest of the field staying out and not opting to come in. Nobody really wants to be the first one to reveal the aces up their sleeve. It's understandable here. It's all going to be about who flinches first in these smaller battles. And well, for Fernandez, he'll look to keep the pressure on Gore for as long as possible. And Gustavo Colici and Boissier now half a second between as they come through Piratella. And this 1.4 GT really trying to unlock what is all the Corvettes in front of it and trying to find its way on to the podium as they come down for Acminerale. Really out right into left, and the chicane always catches out many a driver. If you carry a bit too much speed, you run wide and pick up a black flag. Don't carry enough speed, however, and you're very vulnerable up into the ultra chicane here, so you've got to balance it just right. And as they come out to left-hander, run wide there from Colici, and now he's had to back off in order to avoid picking up what has been a time penalty or a slowdown. In fact, he's going to serve a slowdown, so he wasn't quite able to get the car slowed down in time to avoid picking up the automated penalty. So that's a place that comes the way of Cedric Boissier. So one gain there for the number 8.4 GT, and now up into P5, and well, Gustavo Colici will immediately immediately now be thinking about trying to get back on the counter-attack here. He won't go on the offensive given the fact he's 6 tenths behind straight away into Tamburello, but you can imagine in his mind he'll be thinking to himself, I didn't need to make that mistake, and it's only cost him a position as Fernandez up the road sets the personal best of 38.779. So a lot of drivers now starting to pump in laps. It is pit stop time if they're pumping in laps, and I think just trying to unlock a little bit more pace. But look at that, Gustavo Calici closing down 2 tenths down the run through Tamburello, and again I get the feeling the Corvette drivers here already have gone for setups which do cater to what is the ability to carry corner speed, whereas Boyce here I think might be just carrying a little bit less rear wing and has set the car up to also run a bit stronger on the straights and the acceleration zones. As Calici there following on through the Tosa hairpin, the gap getting closer and closer. And another thing that's a little bit noticeable there, some of you may have noticed the fact the brake lights went on, then came off again on the back of Boise. Now you can, given these cars do not have ABS, they don't have any form of anti-lock braking system, so all the brake modulation has to be done by the driver. They're the ones who prevent the brakes locking up. But sometimes when you see the brake lights come off and then go back on at corner, that's the driver essentially realising they haven't got the car slowed down enough, or they're trying to push the car around the corner on the brakes. That's where they're running brake bias that's more rearward. It helps rotate the car, because what you do essentially is you put more loading onto the rear brakes, and that seems to be a sign that Boyce are really struggling for rotation in the corners compared to Calici, who got incredibly close there through Alta as we're talking about the analysis, and Calici as a result having to back off and the gap doubling up. I think just closing too quickly there for the Alta chicane, and therefore Calici right now, as close as he is, I think he feels confident he can catch his rival in front, but he's got to pick the right place to attack his rival. That is going to be the harder problem here as they come out the corner. Well, the gap now down to what is 3 tenths in the toe here as he powers his way along down the start-finish straight, and as the V8 absolutely roars there, the Pratt & Miller machine heading in towards turn 1 and then turn number 2 shortly. Onto the brakes, the gap there standing at 2.5 tenths, and Calici not looking for a move, just watching on, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to think about the move shortly as they come out of Tamburello and head towards Villeneuve. And as they head onwards, in terms of other updates, we have had a bit of a change of position further back down the order. Mike Rodeman's left the pit lane, is back in P15, with them besting up to P16. He's got ahead of Dupuis, and we will take a look back at what exactly happened there shortly. But as they head on around through the Tosa hairpin, you can see there Calici not quite able to close up as much this time. Does seem as though Boyce getting a better run through the corner. So perhaps a bit of a small mistake there at Tosa the last time round, but Calici looking much more comfortable under braking. But meanwhile, that is an offensive move being made by Bernd Gill versus Jordan Shamblin, the Porsche 911 RSR driver who made that move much earlier on. That brilliant move through Villeneuve in order to get into P11. Well, now he finds himself under pressure from the Corvette. He managed to find a way through eventually, and Shamblin being one of the highest placed Porsches, where there's only 2 Porsches here, and the other one is Alves in P8, so a little bit further up the road there. The Porsches not doing too well today by comparison with their peers, but Shamblin and Alves both trying to give it everything here in order to fly the flag for the German mark as high as they can as they head up towards what is the Auto chicane. That's going to be a very brave move out of braking. Oh goodness me, there's contact. There is big contact there between Gill and Shamblin, and I think Gill carrying so much speed, Shamblin not, and here comes Panzoldi. Panzoldi's going to make it 3 wide as they come down, and Shamblin then pulls over and immediately has to snap the steering. I don't think he expected Panzoldi to absolutely go on the attack. And in the end, Carlo Panzoldi, well, the BMW M8 driver doesn't just take 1, he takes 2. But here comes Shamblin looking back up the inside on the exterior. That's so they come together again. Oh my goodness. And as they come into the pit lane, Shamblin just trying to cut across there, but mistimes it. And Jordan Shamblin, in the end, definitely right now, bruised and battered and not quite broken. But there's going to have to be some repair work done to that car. Otherwise, he's going to be running at a suboptimal pace as Luis Alvarez comes into the pit as well. And, well, I think there's Shamblin being caught out initially by the contact with Gill, and then Panzoldi just completely adding to the mixture. As we look from towards the back of the field to the very front, well, Aparicio still carrying on as he roars his way out of the Aquaminerale sequence and now onwards towards Alta. 12 seconds is the gap, and he's lapping in the 37s. Well, right now, this man is lapping a second and a bit faster than the majority of drivers, if not at least a second faster. So he's absolutely flying out there. And as I look at my commentator booth window, I can tell you that Shamblin has left the pit lane very rapidly indeed, as has Alvarez. So they're both coming out the pit lane and back to the racing immediately. But in terms of some things that have happened since we've been looking at further up the field, indeed we've been looking at other aspects on the circuit, well, we do have some replays to take you through, including firstly what was Mike Rodeman making the move on Matteo Dupuis, and here is the replay. And this was a run down the start-finish straight, and Roadman, having left the pit lane, came out in at P11, and there you can see it being made, and was Mathieu de Piece Indian not quite able to stay ahead, and also losing out there to Wilfred Den Besten, who's gained as a result of going for that undercut strategy. And then let's take a look back at what happened only moments ago between Jordan Chamberlain and none other than what was his rival. And well, this is what happened on the exit of Ravazza, where Carlo Panzoldi and Jordan Chamberlain coming together, and in the end, the two drivers just coming onto an intersecting course for each other. And I think Chamberlain feeling as though Panzoldi had gone much wider than he had, and Panzoldi and not realising the Porsche was coming across. So the two there, well, I think both just trying to run on the same line, and in the end making contact, and that's how they came together. And well, thankfully, it could have been far, far worse, to be fair, but they got away with the majority of it, and I think there just might be a little bit of bruising to the egos of both drivers, but I'm sure they'll get over it and get their heads back down. But coming back to the racing, well, here is more of a shake-up in strategy, because we are now, with the majority of the pit stops getting underway, starting to see strategy step over the top of each other. And here's one of the biggest changes out there, with Vicente Aparicio coming back out in P3, but he was your leader. Well, meanwhile, JB Macedo, who had a 2-second gap to Dev Gore when he came into the pit, well, the Ferrari driver there you can see, in the very colourful liveried Ferrari 488, well, right now he's got Dev Gore right behind him. So Gore having a much faster pit stop. Their stationary times tell the story. For Gore, he was a second faster stationary, and that led to an overall 1.5 second gain in the pit lane compared to Maceda. And Maceda now in that Ferrari is going to be feeling the heat. And the thing about that Ferrari is, towards the end of the race, we expect its tyres to drop off a little bit faster compared to its peers, and that is the danger zone that he's going to have to manage versus Gore as they come on for Aqua Minerale. You can see they're just creeping deep on the run through the right-hander before going uphill, and having to get the car stopped in time, did so with what was just enough room to spare. But Maceda now, as he makes his way on through the auto chicane, we're just trying to open that gap up as quickly as possible, and he needs to use some tyre life here to open the gap, because if he doesn't, and Gore's able to stay close in that tyre, if he's able to stay within half a second, he will gain massively down the straight, even with the straight line speed of that Ferrari, and that will be where he starts to find himself reeled in, and it will only get harder towards the end of the race. Meanwhile, in the pit lane, we do have Porter Fernandez and also Gustavo Calici, and well, Fernandez currently trying to leave the pit lane, and well, the helicam there, well, the blimp camera not doing us any justice because of how misty it is today, so we're not going to be able to use the blimp stroke helicopter camera to see what's going on. But meanwhile, what we can see here is that it's going to be Fernandez who comes out the pit lane. He's not close enough, but here's a move from Gore. Gore's up the inside of Maceda too. Why they go? There's contact between the two, and Maceda's pushed out to the sausage curves, but Gore immediately stops the car and prevents it from going wayward. That's some brilliant car control from both drivers there to avoid that becoming an absolute cataclysmic incident. And you can tell Gore didn't mean to push his rival a little bit wide, and that's why he backed off as much as he did. Brilliant racing between them, and Porter Fernandez, with a brilliant pit stop, the fastest of the trio, has now caught onto the back of this as we ride on board with the number 4. Was they make the way around? The brilliance of this is the fact that you do have door numbers 2, 3 and 4 running in positions 2, 3 and 4 as well. So right now they're all fighting to finish a little bit higher, or exactly on their door number positions. And of course, for the uninitiated, your door number in an official iRacing race represents how highly rated you are in the split, with door number 1 meaning that you are the highest iRating driver, whereas if you've got the lowest door number, you're at the bottom end, and well, that can be a sign of how much iRating you can potentially gain or lose depending on where you finish. But as we ride on board with Porter Fernandez, who got very close on pit lane exit to be involved immediately in this battle, but instead now he's having to watch and wait. Well, he's going to get the tyres back up to temperature, given the fact they lose a little bit of heat whilst they're stationary in the pit lane, not too much. Well, Fernandez just watching this battle and thinking, you know what, if they take each other out this race, I'll take P2, or at least he might be able to get involved here to take was the final spot of the podium off of Gore, depending on what plays out. But he's got to be patient here. He can't force his hand too soon, because the problem is, if he attacks Gore too early, then Maceda gets breathing room, and that Ferrari needs the breathing room compared to the Corvette in the respect of things, and therefore that is why Fernandez right now will continue to watch. He doesn't want to attack too hard. If he sees an opportunity, he'll go for it, but I think he's just going to play the game of, okay, Dev, what are you going to do to JB? Because JB right now seems to be under a lot of pressure on that Ferrari, and I need you to work him a little bit harder. As they come out of Tamburello and down towards Villeneuve, we can see that the gap's static between the three drives, half a second between each of them, so it is getting very nice and tight as they roar the way on through. And as we do say hello there to Estella Aparicio, who I believe might be cheering on this man who's running away at the front of the field, and Vicente right now 14 seconds clear, and that gap only opening up. We look from the top of the field towards the back of the field, and here are two drivers who've made a lot of gains through strategy. They're fighting over P13. It's Mike Roadman in the red and white Corvette versus what is the white, green and blue BMW of Wilfred Denbeston, and as they come on through the chicane, well, there you can see the BMW right now. It may not be the car for the corners, but it's definitely a car for the straights here if your name is Denbeston. And right now the Dutch driver absolutely flying in this BMW and just trying to see what he can do on a bit of a differently set up car compared to his roles, it must be said, as they head in towards Tulsa. But going through the hairpin and up the hill they go. We're getting a very good exit there as well when Denbeston getting the traction down. And I do wonder whether perhaps he's now starting to get more out of this car. Now the fuel's down, the tyres are very heavily rubbered in, and this BMW might just be coming more and more alive over the distance. And if so, we'll credit to him because he's finding a way to make the machine absolutely work. But he comes out of Aquinarale shortly. Roadman there just keeping his cool and carrying on. It'll be interesting to see exactly how it plays out between the two of them. But looking from them to further up the order, we look to Gustavo Calici and Cedric Boisier fighting over P5. They are exactly as they were before they came into the pits, the gap being half a second. And, well, right now, the Ford driver looking to go on the attack. In fact, I believe we had a position swap here, because was Boisier in front before the pit stop? And my gut feeling says yes, he was. And, well, I do believe that Cedric Boisier was ahead, and that was before the pit stops. We did see the move being made. And in the pits, we have seen Calici get back ahead to the Ford GT has lost the place, moved down to P6, and now looking to go back on the offensive once again. So that's a swap in the pits that we didn't spot until now, but you can see there in the fact that the Boisier is not going to let this go as they come out of Tosa and up the hill towards Piratella. Still 10 minutes plus. What is the final lap left on the clock? So we've got more racing to come here, and as these drivers continue to push each other, we come all the way back towards the front of the field in the battle for P2, and you can see JB Masida now starting to open up a little bit of a gap. And here's the thing with Masida, he seems very comfortable in this Ferrari if you don't put pressure on him. I think he's found a way to get this Ferrari to feel nice even when the tyre life's starting to go away. And Gore and Fernandez are getting close to the two Corvettes. They can't quite catch the Ferrari at this time. They're falling backwards away from it, and now they're starting to get into proximity of each other. And Fernandez would love to have an opportunity to try and take that P3, I suspect, after what was that unfortunate altercation between himself and Avicii earlier on today. And once they come in towards Ravazza 2, well, rowing the way on through and on to lap number 22. Our leader's already gone on to said lap. Well, right now, it's 4 tenths between the two Corvette drivers, with almost 9 tenths there to Masida, who's pulling very tight to the pit wall. He wants to break that toe. He wants to make sure those Corvettes can't get close enough to challenge him. He's almost a second clear, and if he's able to get a second clear, there's still a distant toe, but it's nowhere near as significant anymore, and that's where he can start to open that gap up ever more and really run off and make that P2 his own. But we will see whether Gore or Fernandez will let that happen in reality. As they head on towards Villeneuve, we had another change of position, and I believe we have had Wilfred Denbeston finally find a way on through and take what is P13 of a Mike Roadman. Can we get a replay of it? The answer is yes, and here is how Wilfred Denbeston moved into 13th place. And this was coming down out of Tamburello in towards Villeneuve, so going all in on the inside, so it might have been a bit of a poor run for Roadman. Denbeston just up the inside there, classic move, and Mike Roadman not having any response there other than to back on. I think reading the right on the rule and deciding, you know what, I think I might as well let this BMW go because I don't have enough. Oh, and a big slide there as well, very tail-happy Corvette, and I think that might also be a contributing factor as to why he was quite vulnerable out of Tamburello in the first place. But as we return to your live racing pictures, ladies and gents, well, our battle's now coming down. Cedric Boisier has had a big off-track only moments ago off camera, and that has put in the best part of 3 seconds behind Calici, and I believe that may have happened at Piratella, if not Aquinarale. We will try and get a replay of that when we can, but he's lost out quite considerably. In fact, they can see the gap. That is the delta that's opened up. So therefore, our closest battle on the circuit at the moment is between Dev Gore and Balta Fernandez. So we come back to that battle for P3 as they head up towards the timeline. You can see up there JB Masida has actually broken that gap open now to 1.3 seconds, and that's why it's now only really this battle for P3 that's the closest at this time, as Masida sets the personal best of 38.693 versus Gore's 39.190, and Fernandez is 39.470. So the two Corvette drivers not quite on the pace this time around, and I think this is the sign of the direction of travel they're going in. Gustavo Calici Calici, meanwhile, a 39.01 to the nearest hundredth, back in where's P5. Well, ever since Boissier's mistake and getting back ahead of Boissier coming out of the pits, it does mean that Calici now is free to try and chase down what is a podium position, albeit he's got 6 seconds to close down in order to do so. But I think he's starting to believe this may be possible, especially if Gore and Fernandez do a bit of fighting. But he's going to be reliant on the fighting, given that gap is too much to cut down at the current rate or not, if he just tries to do it over the remaining race time. As he heads up the hill and in towards Piratella corner, we're coming out through that left-hander and all the way out now down towards Acque Minerale. We have the replay of what exactly happened to Cedric Boissier, and here is the story. So this was coming in towards Piratella corner. The Ford GT driver carrying a lot of speed and a big sideways slide there. Something tells me that rear right brake in the end just snatching as a result of putting the rear right tyre onto the grass. They're trying to open up as much Piratella as possible, and it is a tiny error. I mean, in the scheme of things, you would think it's nothing, but those small errors being millimetres wide of the tarmac and onto the grass, that's what makes the difference between the perfect line and a line that goes very sideways. And Cedric Boissier will now know he's got even more work to do if he wants to try and bring the hunt back to P5. But as they come on through it, and there's your P5 driver, and then Boissier then further back 3.4 seconds, and the Ford GT driver might have to now start thinking about settling slightly as he heads upwards towards what will be turn number 2. Will come in on down there and through the kinks to 16 and 17, and those kinks given corner numbers in reference, of course, towards the MotoGP layout to this circuit, which sees the run out Ravazza then followed up by a quick chicane before the start-finish line. While the drivers head on around, 6 minutes still left on the clock, and right now this man at the front of the field, Vicente Aparicio, absolutely dominating up front as the car sliding around there. Goodness me. Well, if he's aware he's on camera right now, he's definitely, I think, putting on a little bit of a show, because that was a sideways you're going to get through Piratella, and he is still absolutely attacking this circuit lap after lap. And as he roars his way off through, we do look back to JB Maceda, who is 17.5 seconds behind, but look at this, 1.4 seconds is the breathing room he's bought himself to the battle for P3. And right now, Gore versus Fernandez, well, this is going to be, I think, the big ticket item all the way through to the end of the race, as we look back from the rear of what is the number 3 car, trying to hold off the number 4. And well, this is all for the final spot on the podium. It is going to be at least 2 Corvettes on the podium, we believe, but which 2 Corvettes will it be? Well, Aparicio is going to be one of them, but will it be Gore or will it be Fernandez? President Maceda brings it on back all the way to the end of this race, and that Ferrari, well, the drivers head on down and in towards turn, what is it, 14 and 15, coming down in towards the Ravazza this time. Gore getting the better X out of the auto chicane, opening that gap up quite considerably, but it's as they make the way out to Ravazza through these medium speed corners, that's where Fernandez seems to be a little bit happier with the car, is on medium speed corners compared to the lower speed corners of Gore, and that's the differences between the two drivers, I think, in terms of how happy they feel, albeit in the toe there. Fernandez closing little by little, gap now down to what is 3 tenths as they get ready to go onto the anchors here for Tamburello for what is the 25th time of asking. And a much tighter run there through the first apex for us. Fernandez felt happier with that one. That's to back off slightly on the exit of turn number 3 to settle the rear of the car down, but staying closer. Gore not quite having as good a run there as they now make the way through. One is the Villeneuve chicane, but Gore absolutely nailing that as Fernandez almost running a bit wide there, having to settle the car back down. But Fernandez is absolutely frying the car at these corners now. He wants to get Gore under pressure, but that's the problem as well. When you are the number 2 car in this battle, when you are the chaser, not the one being chased, the first thing you've got to do is stay close. The second thing you've got to do is get closer. The third thing you've got to do is find the move. And as the late great Murray Walker once said, catches one thing, passing is another. And well, right now Fernandez is exactly feeling that here at Imola, in the fact that these two, with very similar approaches to how they've set up their cars, it would seem, and very similar approaches to lap as a whole and lap times, well, Fernandez not quite able to find is that extra couple of hundreds that is able to close the gap and enable him to look for a potential move. As they come out of turns with Alta there, so that'll be at turns up to 11 and 12, and down the rise they go in towards Ravazza at 14 and 15. Fernandez still watching on as we look a bit further back to Wilfred Denbesten, who is chasing after another driver here, and well, we've got a bit of a rivalry forming once again, because he's chasing after Carlo Panzoldi. And the reason why we say this rivalry is reforming is because many of you may remember at the start of the race, these two definitely had not quite elbows out, but it came quite close in the battle to be the leading BMW, particularly after Gourlay's retirement. And well, Panzoldi under some pressure here, and Beston now really closing up with 3 minutes left on the clock. And what I do wonder, if we had double double the race time. Not that we're going to get that, but imagine if we have a 90-minute race. I wonder how far Wilfred Den Besten would go over that distance. He seems to be in a car that is getting faster and faster the more laps it is turning. Now, whether it is just familiarization with the circuit for Wilfred Den Besten, or alternatively, his BMW set to really last long over the distance, well, either way, you can see it in the body language of the car. He just looks so much happier compared to most cars around him in terms of how that car is rotating through the corners. We ride on board with the wonderful V8 twin turbo. Let's listen in. And noticing there as well, taking a long time to get towards the top end of 6th gear, and that'll be a sign that he is running a much more open top gear in order to gain straight line speed. So Wilfred Den Besten there as well, absolutely in a car that's absolutely comfortable in the corners, but it does seem to be very happy on the straights. Now he came a bit more speed in the acceleration zones compared to its rivals, and look at that run there for Villeneuve, and wait, he's going to be very close. He's going to go in on the brakes. Well, I thought he was going to go for the lunge there. Panzoldi covering it off just in time, but I was going to say, if he's going for that move and he's going to make it stick, well, goodness me, I've seen some sends in my time, ladies and gentlemen, but that would be one of the highest and best up there. And oh, goodness me, Panzoldi loses it there going through the corner, just takes a little bit too grass and mimicking a mistake earlier made by Cedric Boyce, albeit it's gone very well for Panzoldi, almost into the barrier there as he tries to get the car turned around, and Carlo Panzoldi losing out through Piratella, and an easy mistake to make. A very difficult one to recover from, and he drops behind Mike Roadman, who takes P13 off him, and Panzoldi now just having to try and get things back together. We've got a quick replay to take a look at exactly what happened, and this was on board with Panzoldi. Was he made his way through? Let's listen in. And you can see there the line, he just pointed the car a little bit too off to the outside of the circuit, and then subsequently you could hear the pickup on the rear right tyre on the grass, brakes went on, and the rear of the car just simply went round. There wasn't enough grip available on that rear right tyre in order to get the car stopped, not without it coming around, and Carlo Panzoldi's race going backwards as a result. As we return to your live racing pictures, ladies and gentlemen, still a minute left on the clock, or if that, and we look to your race leader here in the number 1 of Vicente Aparicio as he roars his way on around, and I believe that's the Ford GT behind him, unless I'm mistaken, of Mathieu Dupuis, who is now a lap down there. So Aparicio doing a fantastic job to put a lap on Dupuis, albeit it's not to begrudge or be disrespectful to Dupuis, it's just the way the race has gone for him today for the Canadian driver. But meanwhile, Aparicio flying his way on through, and with 15 seconds left on the clock as he comes up past the pit lane entry, he will get one more lap on the board, so we will see a 28th and final lap turned here at Imola today. And as he does so, well, there's more drama on the cards, ladies and gentlemen, albeit for Mike Roadman, who's had to be towed to the pits. But what exactly happened to the man who only moments ago was in P13? Well, here's a quick replay to explain. And this was coming down the start-finish straight. Roadman heading to the braking zone here for Tamburello. Car on the inside and just going along slowly. I think he might have run out of fuel. Alternatively, there's a technical issue with the car, because that has had to be towed immediately, and that is not a happy moment, regardless of who the driver is, and the fact you do not want your race to be retired with only a lap or so to go. And that is always a big question, of course. A lot of drivers may have banked on the fact this could have been a 27-lap race. They may not have expected a 28th lap to be rostered, but Aparicio is going to make that happen. And could we see anybody potentially have to do some fuel saving to get themselves to the end of the race? Well, that's always a question, not a welcome one. Might have to wait and find out. As meanwhile in P2, JB Masida in the Ferrari, after being able to break clear of Dev Gore and Balta Fernandez, he's not had any more pressure from him over the last couple of laps. And for Gore versus Fernandez, well, Fernandez over the last couple of laps has fallen away, so it's looking as though this P3 is going the way of Gore today. And credit where it's due to Balta Fernandez, he absolutely huffed and puffed, but in the end there wasn't enough in the tank to take down the charge of Dev Gore. And Gustavo Calici, meanwhile in P5, and a comfortable at P5 here, and ahead of Cedric Boyce. But meanwhile, let's look back to the front of the field, ladies and gentlemen, because as he makes his way through the final corner, it's a straight line sprint to the finish line, and well, he put it on pole by 0.6 of a second. He's been cooking all week, and as he comes to the finish line, he's definitely the master chef of Imola, because it is a Vicente Aparicio who takes your checker flag for victory here today in the Week 10 Top Split Split broadcast. And goodness me, what a gap in the end. 20 seconds he has led the way by. But then as he brings his race to a close, let's come to our P2 driver in the Ferrari. It's JB Masida, and what a drive there from the Ferrari 488 driver. He's absolutely over the moon, and well, with it, he's held off the Corvette charge to make sure they don't get a full podium lockout. It will be Devgor who completes the podium there, P3, ahead of Balta Fernandez, and a brilliant battle between them. Gustavo Calici will bring home P5 there, and then it will be to the Ford GT of Cedric Boissier, who in the end lost out of the top 5, but takes a P6. Gorganavici will take P7, but frustrated at that early contact that deprived him of the opportunity of fight on the podium. It will then be Vitor Alves who comes on home in the AO Racing Machine. Rexy comes home in P8, they're the highest placed Porsche. We'll then have Matthias Matthew Siegel come home in P9 as he makes his way on down. Just behind him, Rodney Cropper P10 at the line in the Ford GT. It'll then be Bernd Geyer who comes home P11 as he finishes his race best of the rest ahead of Wilfried Den Besten, who despite spending the opening stint towards the back of the field, the BMW driver taking a P12 in the end. He'll be chuffed with that, finishing on his door number. Luis Alvarez, meanwhile, will make his way out of the final corner. It's been a difficult race today for the Corvette driver, but I think he'll be happy, all things considered, that he's finished this race, and he's finished at P13. He finishes where he started, and it'll be Jordan Shamblin who completes your finishes there. P14 out of the circuit, with Carlo Panzoldi coming into the pit lane. He'll take P15, and it'll be Matteo Dupuis who takes P16. But what a race, ladies and gentlemen, from start to finish. But let's take you through those race results very shortly. I believe they have been calculated, and here they are. These race results subject to any short inquiries, of course. And for your Week 10 Top Split broadcast in the 1900 GMT or UTC lobby on what was Friday, the 21st of February 2025, we have seen here at Imola, Vicente Aparicio absolutely lead the way. The privateer storming through to victory by 21 seconds over JB Masida. Masida being the Ferrari to break up that podium, and what a drive from him despite some mid to late pressure in the race, not wilted under the pressure, and the Frenchman in the end holding on for the run-up spot, and Devgor completing your overall podium in an absolutely stoic drive there. And well, despite the pressure on Balta Fernandez and also the fighting early on in the race, he never looked back and never gave up. Balta Fernandez took P4, a difficult one for him in the end. I think he was hoping he could potentially sneak that podium away, but wasn't quite able to hang in there all the way to the end. And then Gustavo Calici round off the top 5 there, 3 Corvettes in a row, and the Argentine taking the final spot inside the top 5. Cedric Boissier, the Cuba racing driver, missing out on the top 5, but in the Ford GT threw everything at it, whether it be overtakes on strategy, but it was strategy that was the difference between Calici and Boissier, and the Ford GT driver having to settle for 6th. Gorkan Avici at P7 there, pretty ruined what could have been today if it weren't for that incident at Piratella. Indeed, that's a big question that we will always have in our minds, what could have happened there, but still he finished P7 and a solid drive to that 7th place finish. Vitor Alves at P8, the sole Porsche 911 inside the top 10. Not a happy day for Porsche, but the Brazilian driver giving it his all as always. Matthias Matthew Siegel P9 there, and a solid drive from the number 10 driver, just ahead of Rodney Cropper, who round off the top 10 in the Ford GT. Bernd Geyer finishing at P11, so brilliant battling early on today between himself and some of his rivals, but in the end losing out versus Siegel and Cropper and having to settle for best of rest. Wilfried Den Besten, meanwhile, a revelation it would seem in the BMW M8 to make his way through to P12 on a car that definitely was orientated just as much for straight line speed as it was for cornering capability. And then Luis Alvarez, despite his difficulties, finishing P13, with Jordan Shamblin at P14, and then last but not least on the lead lap P15, Carlo Panzoldi. After the altercation between Shamblin and Panzoldi, I think both cars they're wounded and just looking to get to the end of the race. It was a lap down to Mathieu Dupuis, the fluorescent Folks driver, rounding off all our finishes on circuit P16. An unfortunate retirement, 2 laps to go for Mike Rodeman, who drove a solid race in the number 11, but he takes P17. Then we did have the one retirement over the distance, will be unclassified, he'll be classified as a did not finish driver, James Gourlay there with that instant at what was the Tamburello chicane, in the end seeing him retire 22 laps from the end. So 18 starters, 17 classified finishers, of which 15 on the lead lap, ladies and gentlemen. And that brings to a close all of our racing here at the Autodromo Nacional Enzo E. Dino Ferrari for what has been week 10 of the 2025 Season 1 GTE Sprint Series by CONSPIT, and what a week of racing it has been. But with that, as the circuit at Imola falls silent, we must now turn our attentions to next time. And in a week's time, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way back to the United States of America, and it will be for the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle. We will go roaring through the city of Detroit in the US state of Michigan for what will be a street circuit like no other, with its bumpy road surface, its limited straights, and its excruciatingly tight corners, none more so than the fountain sequence, or what is the exhibit sequence, I should say. It is a circuit where all of our drivers will be prioritising one thing above all else, and it will be track position. But who will lead the way in downtown Detroit in week number 11 of the iRacing GTE Sprint Series by CONSPIT? Well, you'll have to tune in a week's time on Friday the 28th of February 2025, because we'll be back at the 1900 GMT or UTC Top Split session to bring you all the racing action live from circuit side. But until then, I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh. We have been the GT Sprint Series by CONSPIT. Have a great weekend ahead, folks. Remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, remember to stay on track. Good night.